Have you ever looked around and felt like everyone else got ahead while you're still trying to figure things out? Maybe you're in your late 30s, 40s, or even 50s. You see old classmates becoming CEOs, buying bigger homes, posting photos of their achievements, and celebrating milestones that seem far away from your reality. And even if you're doing okay, a question quietly follows you around. Am I falling behind? Most men never say this out loud. And they go to work. They pay the bills. They take care of their responsibilities. But deep inside, many carry a feeling that life should have happened faster. What if that feeling is wrong? What if being late doesn't mean you're failing? What if some of the strongest, most successful men are simply on a different timeline? Today, we're going to explore the psychology of men who succeed later in life, and why their journey often creates something far more valuable than early success. Because sometimes the people who take the longest to arrive build the strongest foundations. The hidden struggle nobody talks about. Society loves stories about young success. The 25-year-old millionaire, the entrepreneur who became famous before 30, the prodigy who seemed to have life figured out early. But that's only one version of success. There is another story that rarely gets attention. It's the story of the man who spends years searching, the man who changes careers, the man who starts over, the man whose path looks confusing from the outside. For a long time, his life doesn't make sense to anyone, including himself. While others appear to move forward in a straight line, he feels like he's taking detours. And that's exactly why he often doubts himself. But here's something important. A confusing path isn't always a wrong path. Sometimes, it's the path required to discover who you really are. Why? Some men can't settle for the wrong life. Have you ever noticed that some people can commit to almost any career or lifestyle? They pick a direction and stick with it. But other people struggle. Not because they're lazy, not because they're afraid, and not because they lack ambition. The problem is that something inside them refuses to fully commit to a life that doesn't feel right. They try a job. It looks perfect on paper. Everyone approves. But after a while, something feels off, so they leave. Then they try something else, and the cycle repeats. To the outside world, it looks like uncertainty, but internally, it's something deeper. It's a search for alignment. These men aren't looking for any path. They're looking for the right path, and that search often takes longer than people realize. The famous psychologist Carl Jung believed that forcing people into identities that don't fit them can create deep inner conflict. You may look successful from the outside, but inside, you feel disconnected from your own life. Many men who succeed later avoid this trap, not because they are smarter, because they refuse to build their future on a foundation that feels false. The price they pay is delay, but the reward is authenticity. The painful years of not knowing. This is usually the hardest part. The years when nothing seems to be working. The years when you know you're capable of more, but can't seem to prove it. You start projects. You quit projects. You chase opportunities. Some work. Most don't. People begin asking questions. When are you going to settle down? When are you going to figure it out? What are you doing with your life? And honestly, sometimes you ask yourself the same questions. This stage can feel incredibly lonely because you can see your potential. You can feel it, but you haven't turned it into visible results yet. And in today's world, visible results are often treated as the only thing that matters. But here's what many people don't understand. Those years aren't empty. They're shaping you. Every disappointment teaches something. Every failure reveals something. Every wrong turn eliminates another path that wasn't meant for you. It doesn't feel productive while it's happening, but growth rarely feels productive in the moment. It's only later that you realize those difficult years were preparing you for something bigger. Why failure becomes an advantage. Most people try to avoid failure. That's natural. Failure hurts. It damages confidence. It creates doubt. But men who succeed later in life often spend years becoming familiar with failure. And something interesting happens because of that. They develop a level of understanding that many early achievers never get. Think about it. When everything works quickly, You don't always learn why it worked, but when things fail repeatedly, you become a student of reality. You begin noticing patterns. You learn what doesn't work. You learn how people behave. You learn how businesses operate. You learn how pressure changes decision-making. Most importantly, you learn about yourself. You discover your weaknesses, your blind spots, your emotional triggers, your limits. And because you've spent years facing reality instead of avoiding it, your judgment becomes stronger. You stop being impressed by appearances. You start looking beneath the surface. That wisdom may not create instant success, but over time, it becomes a powerful advantage because life rewards understanding, and understanding is often earned through struggle. The quiet years are not wasted years. One of the biggest misunderstandings about late success is that people assume nothing is happening. A man looks ordinary. He works a regular job. His life doesn't appear extraordinary. No awards, no headlines, no viral achievements. But underneath the surface, a lot is happening. He's learning discipline. He's learning patience. He's learning responsibility. He's learning resilience. These qualities don't create dramatic social media posts, but they create strong men. The truth is, many of the most important transformations happen quietly. No audience, no applause, no recognition, just daily effort. The man who continues showing up when nobody notices. The man who keeps learning when progress feels invisible. The man who refuses to quit even when he has every reason to. Those years matter. In fact, they may be the years that matter most, because character is usually built in silence, not in celebration. The difference between confidence and stability. Many people think successful men are confident, and sometimes they are, but confidence isn't always what makes someone powerful. Confidence can disappear when circumstances change. Confidence can crack under pressure. There's something stronger, stability. The men who succeed later often develop stability. Because they've already survived uncertainty. They've already faced rejection. They've already experienced failure. They've already questioned themselves hundreds of times. So, when new challenges appear, they don't panic. They've been here before. This creates a different kind of strength. They don't need to prove themselves every day. They don't need constant validation. They don't need everyone to agree with them. Their sense of identity comes from experience, not approval. And people notice that, not because these men are loud, but because they are grounded. They bring calm into difficult situations. They make decisions with clarity. They speak less, but their words carry more weight. That's not confidence. That's stability. And stability is incredibly valuable. The greatest danger of late success. However, there is one thing that can destroy this entire journey. Bitterness. Many men spend years building themselves, but they make one mistake. They keep comparing their life to someone else's timeline. They look back and see only what they missed, the opportunities they didn't get, the years they didn't maximize, the achievements they didn't reach, and gradually, they start believing they wasted their life. This is dangerous, because the story you tell yourself about your past shapes your future. Two men can experience the exact same struggles. One becomes grateful, the other becomes bitter. One sees preparation, the other sees failure. One sees lessons, the other sees regret. The events are identical. The interpretation is different, and that interpretation changes everything. The men who eventually thrive learn how to see their past accurately, not as evidence that they're broken, but as evidence of how they were built. Reframing the delay. Think about every job that didn't fit, every relationship that taught you something, every mistake that forced you to grow, every setback that tested your patience. What if those experiences weren't interruptions? What if they were part of the process? What if the delay wasn't punishment? What if it was preparation? This doesn't mean every painful experience happened for a magical reason. It simply means that those experiences contributed to who you became. And without them, you might not have developed the wisdom, resilience, and self-awareness you have today. The men who succeed later understand this. They stop carrying the past as proof that they failed. Instead, They treat it as evidence of growth, and that shift changes everything. Because once you stop fighting your story, you can finally use it. What changes in the second half of life? Something remarkable often happens as these men get older. The urgency starts disappearing. Not ambition, not dreams, not goals. Just the panic, the desperate feeling that time is running out, the need to keep up with everyone else, the fear of being judged. Those things begin to lose their power. And when they do, decision-making becomes clearer. For the first time, they're acting from wisdom instead of pressure. They're no longer trying to impress people. They're trying to build something meaningful. And because they've spent years understanding themselves, they move with greater precision. They know what matters. They know what doesn't. They know who they are. That self-knowledge creates momentum. Ironically, many men become more effective after they stop chasing approval. Because now, all of their energy goes toward the right goals. Not the popular goals. Not the expected goals. The right goals. Final thoughts. So if you're watching this and feel like you're behind in life, remember something important. Not every successful life follows the same schedule. Some people bloom early. Others bloom later. Neither path is automatically better. They're simply different. The years that look unproductive may be developing skills, wisdom, and strength that can't be rushed. The years that feel lonely may be shaping your character. The years that seem confusing may be helping you discover the life that actually fits you. The question isn't whether you're behind. The real question is this: are you building something real? Because a fast success built on the wrong foundation can collapse. But a slower success built on truth, experience, and self-awareness can last a lifetime. And maybe that's the real lesson. You're not necessarily behind. You may still be becoming the person you're meant to be. And sometimes, the strongest men aren't the ones who arrive first. They're the ones who keep building when nobody can see the progress. The ones who stay faithful to the process. The ones who refuse to give up on themselves. Because when they finally arrive, they don't just have success. They have something even more valuable. They have a life that truly belongs to them. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear where you are on your journey. And remember, your timeline is not your identity. Keep building.